So there was a reason I was asking for that Twitter. The reason is, it's not just a word. You have another award. You can follow me. No, I'm just joking. I always have a hard time kind of trying to have more followers than my tweets, but it seems like I'm always going opposite direction. I'm tweeting too much and I don't get enough followers. So perhaps you can help me to drive that. My name is Fariz Saracevic. I work for IBM, but I'm here to represent Bosnia Agile. I'm one of the founding members, and been involved with the Agile for a good number of years. I've gone through IBM Agile Transformation. Scott left, but we worked together in IBM, and we shared the good part of good and bad, what happened in IBM. So one of the things that I want to talk to you today, and this is going to be kind of light a topic, is Agile Transformation through my eyes, how that actually happened in IBM. First of all, oops, clicker is not working. Okay, the old-fashioned way. It's not moving. There you go. I want to thank our sponsors. Really appreciate everything what they have done. This could not have happened without them. So let's have a round of applause for the sponsors. See, it still doesn't work. Clicker. Someone can check the clicker in the meantime. That'd be great. So what we're going to do today is the next 40 minutes, because Igor already chewed my 5 minutes. We're going to look at IBM and Agile, kind of look at a company first before we can start talking about Agile. The second part is thinking about Agile. And what I thought in that portion is just kind of look at the transformation story that we have gone through. What are the steps? What are the phases? And where we are going, actually. So it's a process that it's an ongoing process, never stops. And then I looked at some case studies that might be interesting to the communities in Bosnia. So I found the kind of one story that goes for outsourcing a software factory case, so that might be kind of relevant. And last part is talking about some things where I see that you can actually dive into Agile Transformation. Now, think of it from IBM perspective. IBM is a huge company, 430,000 people. But it doesn't matter the size. It really matters what you actually do. Now, when you look at the IBM, 400,000 people think there's no chance you're going to do any Agile Transformation. But that company is built into different groups, different brands, and so on. So it actually goes through different parts of organization, goes through transformation. The other parts is still on traditional way. Some of adopting some of new technologies, frameworks, and so on. But IBM started way back to think about software development, and was purely waterfall company. It was very rigid. It's a hard company to work in those early days. But eventually, as software was becoming a main part of the business, IBM started to change. In 1990s, we started with iterative development, rational unified process. It was the methodology, the framework at that time. IBM acquired a company called Rational, and that became a standard. Pretty much in 1990s and early 2000, that was the framework that everyone was looking at and utilizing. Until 2001, with Agile Manifesto, if you ask every single company what's the framework that they're using, 1 in 3 probably they will say RUP. Even today, RUP probably represents somewhere between 7 to 10%. But somewhere down along the lines, we started transformation. We started looking at Agile, Lean. There was a trend at one point of time we talked about SOA. The latest one that we looked is a DevOps, and part of a DevOps, you can go in various directions. So we're going to take a look into all of these transformations. If we start peeling IBM and look the IBM through eyes of different groups, I want to focus us on a software group. Software group has, give and take, 26,000 people spread across the world. There might be new sites coming up, and new sites going down. We always continuously changing, acquiring companies, selling your businesses. People still kind of ask me, hey, you still sell the laptops. We sold the laptops business probably 6-7 years ago. It's now a Chinese company called Lenovo. But that's what IBM is known. So it's a huge geographically dispersed team. Now for this presentation, I'll focus on a specific team that I was part of it. It's collaborative lifecycle management. This team was focused on the development or multiple applications. And each application has its own team, and then teams based on application had certain capabilities, and then you had sub-teams for those capabilities. I was running what's called the CLM, or Collaborative Lifecycle Management Solution Accelerator, from early 2000 until the mid-2012. Prior to that, I was working as a product manager for our automated software quality teams. So how we actually worked as a team, as you can see, is we had to split the teams into manageable chunks. It could be that some teams were really what we talk in Agile, between 3 to 6 people. Some teams might be smaller, some teams might be larger. So the CLM actually is divided in four different applications. The core foundation is Jazz Team Foundation. Then you have Rational Team Concert, Rational Quality Manager, and Rational Doors Next Generation, or what used to be called Rational Requirements Composer. So those are kind of how the teams are structured, and then under each of these applications, we had certain capabilities, and you have the teams managing those capabilities. Prior to that, what Rational tried is to build application that's open to the communities. And what we have done is we built what we call today Eclipse. I'm pretty sure if I ask a question, how many are here Eclipse users? Okay, a few hands. Okay, so that was a great experiment. We've done it, we give it to community, and that become open source. We learn the lesson. Giving it community, it's nice and it helps the spirit, but really doesn't help much IBM. So what we've done is with the Jazz, what we've done, we changed how we do development. We actually do now what we call open development. So everything that we develop today, you can go on a jazz.net and we can see every single work item, every single epic, story, defect that someone opens. All that is available to you. We don't hide anything. Of course, we hide the source code. We don't give you access to the source code as it was the case with Eclipse. But from that perspective, you can actually see how our teams are structured, how teams are actually communicating, collaborating. And that's the change, what happened with the CLM. That's what I say, operate transparently through jazz.net. Now let's take a look at thinking Agile and why did we need to go into that direction? Well, IBM Rational was not a lean, mean machine always. Because of the IBM and all the processes that we had, it was becoming kind of a big machine, and there were a lot of small, nimble startups who were starting to challenge companies like IBM and some other companies. And what we started seeing that we need to change, we need to organize ourselves differently. We need to start developing differently. We need to provide satisfaction that our customers are expecting. So initially, we did not have even good measures to say how we are doing. So we had to first discover where we are, to measure ourselves before you start your Agile transformation path. That's a very key item that you need to keep in mind. So before you dive into Agile transformation, you have to think about metrics. And we're going to revisit that when we talked about where you should start and what should be next steps. So what challenges did IBM try to address? Well, number one is we wanted to change faster. We want to deliver the code faster to our end users. It's not something that you can say, my delivery cycle was 12 months, and now it's going to change on a quarterly basis. It actually takes quite a bit of time. Each of these CLM applications, they actually had their own builds. And each application was delivering their code. So you had 4 teams delivering their code, and then they basically were supposed to work seamlessly. Well, guess what? When customer installs 2, 3 applications, they don't actually even install together because there are issues, there are conflicts. It might be because APIs that you used in one application is different code base than the other application, and there was communication issues. You were not able to link your stories and so on. So satisfaction from a customer was low. So another measure that we need to keep in our mind. Because the world is changing, people on IBM are also listening to others and kind of listening how developers need to change. Our developers actually are doing a great job, but because all of this overhead processes that we had, we end up kind of killing morale a lot of people. So when we started on a CLM path in 2006, the idea was, let's build a small team and let's completely ship them outside our organization and let's see what they can actually build. It took them 2 years to build the foundation of the CLM. And in 2008, the first product, Rational Team Concert, was born. So that was the only way we could actually transform our organization. And what was that path? You can actually see it in this chart. So 2008, 2009 was the first phase. And that was not even Agile transformation. We're in the discovery mode at that time. We're just trying to build something new and discover how we're actually doing. In 2010, we're actually going through the Agile adoption path. And during that Agile adoption path, people are kind of learning, teaching themselves about Scrum. Trust me, not everyone knows about Agile and Scrum outside Bosnia. So it's a myth. We are actually pretty in a good shape, what we have done this year, educating you, kind of trying to catch up with the rest of the world. But there's a lot of organization that still thinks traditional way. They read and try to do Agile and Lean, but it's everything but. Then starting with 2012, 2013, there's a new transformation happening that's moving into DevOps with combining our development and operation. And that's where you actually start getting some benefits of how fast you can actually build your applications, how fast your cycles are. So instead of building something for 12 months, you can actually build it on a quarterly basis. Right now, who's our stakeholders? Can you imagine who's our stakeholders for our tools? Everyone here in this room, your stakeholders. So what we have done is, on the end of the month, when we finish our sprint, our code is posted on a jazz.net. You can download it, try it, give us your feedback. And it's all transparent. Everything what we delivered, you can see, it's available for your information. because we are building that code for you, we're waiting for input from you as the stakeholders. Where we're going? We're going with continuous delivery. That's the biggest trend. It's not that you wait for a quarter to get actually a new update, but you actually want to continuously have a build. And we're moving into a cloud direction. So our application doesn't need to be installed anymore. It resides somewhere on the cloud. It could be multi-tenant cloud, where it's shared with multiple customers, and you have access to certain features. Because it's a multi-tenant, you don't get the flexibility. Everyone has to be kind of with the same set of features, and when they are upgraded, everyone gets a benefit of these new features. But if they're sending drawbacks, you get drawbacks as well. That's a multi-tenant environment. The second approach is single-tenant environment, virtual private cloud, where you get actually benefits of customization, everything that you need. But because you need to customize, there's also cost involved. Now, you might have specific government, medical regulations, or you have specific needs as your team. You want to have a specific workflow, your work items, defects has to have a specific attributes and so on. So all that needs to be accounted. And that gives you flexibility, but you need to live in a virtual private cloud. So it means you have your own dedicated area. So that's where the future is. There was a report from Gartner. It was issued in 2012. Their prediction at that time was that on-premise solution reached a peak in 2013. And ever since then, it goes down. Hybrid cloud means combination of something that you have your on-premise, so perhaps you have source code that you don't want put in the cloud, but other application could be requirements, it could be work item management, so your defects, testing lives in the cloud. That's actually is growing. Pure cloud is also growing, but not as fast as a hybrid cloud. And then towards the end of 2015 and 2016, they expect that hybrid cloud will actually start kind of flattening down, and the pure cloud is going to continue. So those are the trends that we see, and we actually taking advantage, if you want to say that. So how to achieve agility? Well, number one is you want to produce working code on a regular basis. What is regular basis? You as an organization need to define. In our cases, we decide we're going to have a 4-week sprints, and every 4 weeks we post that code on jazz.net. Do continuous regression testing, and then take a test-driven development approach. I believe someone was talking earlier today about definition of done. I believe Eric was talking about. They changed the definition of done, and suddenly they see number of stories that's still not completed when a sprint is over. So definition of done can actually evolve continuously, because every time when you have a sprint retrospective, you might actually learn something that would allow you to improve the next time. So we've gone through the fair share of refinements of the definition of done. So that's one thing you need to keep closely. Work closely with the stakeholders, ideally on a daily basis. Yes, we do that. Jazz.net is the place where we do. We have over 200,000 registered members on Jazz.net, and trust me, we get a lot of feedback. The nice thing about Jazz.net is a forum. And it's when someone asked me a question, I said, I don't know the answer, but instead of me going asking in development and probably give you a feedback within 2-3 days, why don't you get it on a Jazz.net forum? You're going to get the answer probably within 15 minutes. If you look the questions that are posted and the answers, community like yourself are answering and providing the feedback, because you know the tool better than we probably in some cases. Our self-organized and disciplined team working with the appropriate governance framework. Well, you still need to have some kind of a governance framework. It's not that you have wild, wild west now and you can do whatever you want. You still need to have a certain number of processes, but it's on the light side. It's not something that should be heavy. You need to have your daily scrums. You need to have your sprint retrospectives. So something usual that we already learned today about what is kind of a key assumption about the Scrum. And regularly reflect and measure. Measuring is a very key aspect of not just Agile, for any team to be successful. It doesn't matter if we're talking about traditional, Agile, or some other methodology. Measuring is a critical factor. So a few examples of how we actually go about Agile transformation. We talked about requirements a bit, and sometimes customer just gives high-level requirements and you're up to kind of the neck to discover what the rest is. Well, that's good, but it's not sufficient. You need to dive into those specific requirements because that's the basis of what you're building. So a question was asked earlier today is how can I build something if requirements are not defined? Very simple answer. You don't build it. You cannot build something unless your requirements are not defined. So what we do is we take actually a product backlog and you put all the requirements that you get, either from stakeholders, from the team that's working on, you discover requirements. And then on top of the product backlog, you have requirements that are most defined. And then you draw the line, the requirements that have sufficient definition that you can actually implement next sprint. So that set of requirements is something that you're actually going to utilize and put on next sprint. And that's how you wait and kind of continuously look at a product backlog, refine it, fine-tune it. This is one of the ways how you can actually do it, is you keep your requirements in a document. It could be, in this case, I'm showing an example to rational towards next generation, but you define what the requirements is you might have sketches, you might have some flows, you might have some just things that you draw on a napkins, but you talk it as a picture and you put it as an artifact. Doesn't matter what you do, is the key is the person who actually take that story epic, he has sufficient information that he can actually implement. If it doesn't, it cannot go into next sprint. Now, in our cases, because we do a lot of outsourcing, I think we still have a challenge asking the questions from people who are paying for that work. Don't be afraid. You'll be surprised when you start asking the right questions, and there's no wrong question always. They will provide you good feedback. Because what you want to do is, on the end of the day, is that you implement what they're asking for. If you start with just one sentence and you go off and build something, after 2-3 months they might say, well, this is not what I asked for. Well, based on your definition, this is what we built. That means you lost the time frame. So another beauty about Agile is when you have a clear definition and you implement that during the sprint retrospective, during the sprint review, stakeholder can say, yes, this is exactly what I asked, and kind of bless it. So I like what Eric have done is that you are not done until the stakeholder actually bless it and say, yeah, this is done and we can actually move to the next setup. So until it's not done, it actually just moved to the next sprint, unfortunately. And kind of takes the development cycle from that part. This is now talking more about the next layer. So now you have your requirements, you move into a development, and now you put many annotations. You have your architect, you have other development team members involved, and going to the next layer. So all that is part of that process, how you're actually building not just your product, how you're actually transforming yourself in that case. And big part of the development is, unfortunately, some cases, we're talking about Traditional, it's project management, so you might actually have seen an image like that, or you might actually see an image like on the bottom side. So you still have to kind of find where are you at any point of time. I hear from a lot of teams, and I'm working on a blog to kind of discuss the advantage and pros of using a sticky notes versus using tools, and when you actually should be using and not using. Because what I see is a lot of teams like to use the stickies, and everything what they do is somewhere written on a piece of paper, and that's fine. But as soon as you start growing and your team is not collocated anymore, that becomes difficult. Your development tools actually should help you supplement that work. But you have to have right tools and the tools that fit your organization, something that's adaptable. That's what we've tried to do utilizing collaborative lifecycle management platform. So we have modified the tools for our needs. You might actually have a different needs, and you might need to modify differently. But that's part of a process of discovery. So every time when you finish your sprint, you're going to say, okay, this did not work for us, or we would like to see these changes and try to improve it. So where we end up with our metrics, this is going back to 2008 when we started. Our project initiation took 30 days just to kind of start a project. It's way, way too long. Groom backlog, 3 months. 3 months just to groom the backlog. Now it's ongoing. Overall time to development, 120 days. Now everything is pretty fast because when you break your epics into stories and stories into a task, tasks should not be longer than 1 to 2 days. Anything that's longer, there's something wrong. Compose the build time, how long does it take to build, build verification, availability, iteration time. I will not read everything, but kind of you get the feel that we had quite a bit of improvement. Overall time to production, just when you have a product, how long does it take you from your finished product to move into production? It took us 9 days in the past. Between the releases, it was 9 months, it was 12 months to start. We actually are moving this. This is an outdated slide. It says 3 months. It's continuously. So as soon as we have something new, if you go to our cloud multi-tenant environment, we actually push new releases. If you use a Facebook, if you use some of the social networks, that's the way actually how it works these days. Now that's from our development perspective, but what happens from a customer end perspective? Let's take a look what was their satisfaction. Number of calls in 2006 was 135,000 calls. Number of calls in 2013 was 49% down. We increased the number of customers in that period of time. That's not calculated in that. What we've done is we actually made a better software. We gave ability for customer to find the information. Customer defect survival rate dropped by 33%. It's still high, but it's dropping. Defect backlog was reduced by 6 months. So everything that you open today should be resolved approximately within 3 months. Enhancement triage. In 2006, if you put requests for new features, only 3% would actually see our light. Now, we provide you feedback, and we're going to tell you immediately if that's going to be implemented or not, and give you reasons why not. So that actually moved to 100%. Customer satisfaction from 83% to 88%. There's still work, but I think that's actually a pretty good number. And what's most important is when you think about your Agile transformation, don't think about it only from your development perspective. Think about, like Scott was talking about, Agile is applicable to pretty much anything. So when you start moving your code to customer operation, maintenance, all that should be part of your Agile transformation story. So we're going to now take a look at a case study. It's two large European insurance companies, customers, that are mainly delivering systems through a set of system integrators and providers. It's kind of a blind reference, doesn't provide a specific name. So main concern is managing all these providers. How they're going to actually manage the providers. It could be that you're one of them, because usually the big companies have more than one vendor that they're working, one of the providers. Big problem is dividing and integrating the work between those providers. How do you actually managing? How do you oversee? How do you provide the feedback and so on? This is a software factory dashboard. What this particular customer was able to do is create a dashboard. It's a single view into his development. How many of you actually have any type of a dashboard, something that kind of can see the light into all your development activities? Okay. If you build one, that's a good one. But I see a few hands. So I see hands from our speakers and a couple of hands from the audience. This is a great example. Hands was raised in here, that they actually have that view. They can see at any point of time what's going on with my project, or if you have multiple projects. So in this case, what a customer have done is they actually build the number of the project. This is kind of a mock-up, but it says internal team, software factory A, software factory B. All these widgets on the screens can be rearranged, can be added, removed to fit your needs. So think of it from your perspective. You need to have a view like that. Second thing, what you need to do is see what's going on with your applications. Are you actually building, deploying your application, your test environment? What's happening with the quality of your codes, details on an open task? What's your defect backlog? Is it going up or going down? This actually provides valuable information. I mean, Eric provided his snapshot of last week of the data. And just because he was looking at the data, he discovered some kind of interesting things. And then when he looked deeper and deeper, he discovered more interesting things and reasons why it's happening. But if you do not actually measure yourself, you have no idea what's going on. We talked about product backlog. That's one of the biggest challenges that I see with a lot of customers is not knowing how to actually manage a product backlog. In my case, with every team, that's a central point, is a product backlog. And when they start asking me, well, should I have multiple backlogs? No, you're going to have one product backlog. You have one product backlog. You might have different release cycles. So you might have release A, release B. You might have multiple teams, but everything is drawn from that product backlog. That's why we're saying the product backlog is timeless. So that's one thing that you should keep in mind. But then you need to kind of have a different attributes. How do you actually prioritize the product backlog? It's a lot of work. And that's something that the entire team works together. You have a person who is responsible for that product backlog, and the person responsible for what actually should be going into a next sprint, but entire team actually participate in product backlog development. Application deliverables. So when you deliver a piece of code, you need to know what you delivered. It's not just, hey, I put some code into my application, but now I don't have a history. In this case, every time when you add something, you have a work item. It can be a defect, work item for a story, enhancement, and so on. But it actually clearly states who made a change, when the change was made, why the change was made. And of course, that history gives you ability that you can actually take it back. A couple more minutes and just a few words of wisdom from my side that you should be thinking about Agile Transformation. These slides will be posted by the end of the week on a slide share, so every single presenter will have their slides as well as the recording of sessions, so please share them with your peers. If they were not able to make it today, that's another way they can actually educate themselves. So based on knowledge of organization, create a map of potential improvement areas. And when you look at the improvement areas, don't put everything in one chunk. You have to think about what can I do in a short period of time, what can I do in a medium period of time, 6 to 12 months, and something that should be in a long period of time. Now, I'll not go into details, but usually where you have the bottlenecks is requirements, change management. What's missing here is probably a testing. Those are the pain points initially that I hear from a customer. Now, don't expect that your improvement is going to be 50, 60%. If someone says, we're going to improve 50%, I said, trust me, there's no chance. These are some realistic numbers. This is what you should gauge as a good examples. 5% improvement, 10% improvement, 15% improvement. That's kind of a good number to think about from improvement perspective. But based on this percentage of improvement, you can actually turn this into a dollar value, into a Bosnian mark value, and you can actually say how much savings did you make with these changes. And you will be surprised when you go through these numbers that even 10% actually is pretty significant saving. And plan for realistic phase adoption. So we talked about you cannot change the entire organization immediately. Start kind of thinking about discipline and metrics. Numbers are key. If you cannot measure, you don't know if you improved or you actually are in worse shape than you were. Start with defect management, change management. These are some of the examples: defects by priority, defects by age. Then you kind of dive into validation and test. Perhaps in the same time you work with requirements and use cases. Then you start talking about your team's iterative development, design, and you build as you go through your Agile transformation story. It's not something that kind of happens at the same time. And the side, I think this is the last slide, is delivering agility in your organization. Process and method content should be based on kind of a standard frameworks. They have years of experience. The frameworks are just the frameworks. It's not something that means you have to take them exactly like they stand. The framework allows you to be modified to fit your team. So keep that in mind. You can modify those frameworks. Metrics, pilots. If you want to be successful, if you have a larger team, let's say 50 people in your organization, pick a small team, 3 to 5 people, and try, can I actually be successful in Agile? And prove it to your management team, your executives, that this pilot will actually be successful. Show the numbers. You need to have a proof point that this is a success. And the last thing is call to action. So, as I said, consider an Agile pilot. But when you talk about Agile pilot, key is, of course, to deliver the Agile pilot. But there are companies, even in Bosnia, who have gone through the Agile transformation themselves. Ask them as a mentors. If you need a mentor, we have here mentors who can help you. I'm pretty sure any one of the speakers here would be glad to give you guidance, give you their input, how to actually go through your Agile transformation. Second part is educate a team. You have gone through the training, but I'm pretty sure there's a good number of folks who haven't. You need to understand how Agile works and how it would be applicable in your organization. So try to actually have majority of your team educated. What you don't want to end up is having, and I'll use analogy now, is if you're on the top of the hill, if you have a ball, you let that ball, it's going to roll down the hill. If you have big block, it doesn't move. You want to have as many balls that can actually roll your project. You don't want to have those blocks because they are not good for your team. But even those blocks can be transformed. So keep that in mind. That it cannot just be transformed, they have to move to a different team. Get an Agile health check, adopt appropriate practices. So from a Bosnia Agile perspective, we are here actually to go to the next phase, is to come to your organization, help you to the Agile transformation story. So it's not a big team that we have, but therefore we have speakers. They are Agile coaches, mentors. They're happy to get engaged. We just need to find your interest and driver that you want to go to the next step. With that, I want to thank you for listening. Hopefully I was not too boring. Hopefully you learned something today. I think the other two sessions are not over, so we have probably additional 4 or 5 minutes. We will all reconvene in this room, and we're going to have some fun. We have some, hopefully our secret guest speaker is here. He's going to talk about Agile in a different perspective. Any questions? Don't forget, you still can tweet. Drawing is closer and closer.
Of course, there's one.
Thank you. Thank you.